Thanks again for coming. We're going to jump into just kind of what we're going to talk about with watch parties and what Athey is and who we are, all those kinds of things. But feel free to hang out and continue to chow down while we go through this. We'll make it kind of a working meeting and stuff. Sound good? Well, what we're going to talk about here, my wife and I, Angela, I'm James, if you don't know me, we're going to share a little bit about what Athey is, who we are, what our history and kind of our culture is, really. Dig into that. If we had hours and hours and hours, we'd still probably run out of time. We're just going to give a kind of an overview on all that stuff, just to kind of connect with you a little bit and hopefully help you see a little bit more of who we are. Does that sound good? Awesome. Well, thanks again for coming. We're going to jump into this now, and my wife is going to take it from here and talk about some of the history of Athey Creek, where we've been. Because if you haven't been around very long, you may get a different impression of what how we've really begun, and it really does tie in. It does say a lot to understand some of the history in these 25 plus years we've been around. So with that said, here's my lovely better half, Angela. Away we go. There we go.
I'm James's sidekick. Actually, I am so thankful just to be able to be a part, along with you guys, of what the Lord has done throughout all these years. And what's amazing is that, God's sovereignty. We get to trust in the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, that knows the beginning and the end. And to be able to be a part of what he's doing presently is, again, just a huge blessing. And again, we're so thankful that we get to, remember what the Lord has done, and look forward to, continuing to be part of what to be his hands and feet and being part of what he's going to be doing in the future. So let's go back into the history. So here we go. Are you guys ready for this? Once upon a time, in a land far, far away. Oh, wait a minute. One more slide. Oh, wait, we got history. One more. Once upon a time, in a land far, far away, there was a man and his beautiful wife. And the land was so far away, as far as Apple Valley, Rouge, Applegate Valley. I know this really well. For those of you who have been listening to Pastor Brett for all these years, you guys know the story. They were there attending Applegate Christian Fellowship, and they felt the strong calling to come to Portland, which, as he has shared before, that was just, it's like, Portland, really? But they were obedient, and they came out. And, I didn't know you included this one. So this is part of our crew as well. As you can see, we have Joey there, Brooke and Casey, and then these two little guys over here, that's part of our crew. We actually have one more, but he was only 9 months, so he didn't make the picture. He was, I think he's probably down here. Maybe he's down here. But yes, so we actually came to Athey Creek back in 1997, a year after it started in 1996. So that's been really fun to connect. And there you go. I was about to say Applegate. Athey Creek Middle School is where we started meeting. Raise your hand if you guys were around in back. Okay, very, very, a lot of you. And we came, Sundays were only 100, about 100, a little over 100 people on Sundays. And Wednesdays were maybe 20 people in a little classroom tops. So back then, because the numbers were fewer, we would enjoy family camps. And this particular family camp, well, actually, all of the original ones were down in the beach. Camp Bradley. How could I forget Camp Bradley? We used to sing Camp Bradley songs all the way down there. All right. Then, several years passed, we went from 1 service to 2 services, finally to 3 services. And I think the teachers got a little bit tired of seeing diapers left behind in the classrooms. I don't know. No, the Lord had a plan, and he moved us over to Wilsonville. And this was in 2010, if I'm correct. Is that right? In 2010, we met in the warehouse there. Let me go ahead and speed it up here. And we built it out, kind of similar, right, to what we have here at this building. Then in 2013, we started breaking ground. Actually, 2015, we started breaking ground. And there you go. We're our present sanctuary. Well, the Lord opened the opportunity to start doing satellite churches. And so in 2019, we did a satellite church in Sherwood as well as in Salem. And so that was also a venture of faith, as were, actually this particular one here is the watch party that we have in the watch party that has kind of become like a little church. And this is the one up in Hillsboro, the farm church. I was like, it's the farm church, but yes, it's in Hillsboro. And then last but not least, here's you guys, the watch parties. Is anybody on here in this picture? Did you guys make the cut? No? I think this is an Arizona one, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, and again, it's what a huge blessing. Who would have thunk, right? That go into all the world meant in this form, right? That we were able to do that. Well, I think that's where I get cut, right? Where's the hook? The hook is pulling on me. You guys, thanks so much. And again, there you go. That's a little brief miniature history of Athey Creek.
Thank you. There's so much we could talk about when it comes to history. You might be wondering, well, why would we go into the history of Athey? I mean, why aren't we just talking about now? Well, there's a lot of reasons. But before we tackle that, here's kind of a theme verse. And if you've been around a while, you've heard Brett share this and quote this and teach this. But this is out of Acts 2:42. This is really near and dear to our heart. It says, they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, to the fellowship, to the breaking of bread, and to prayer. That's really a big theme verse for what Athey is and does. Because, well, why is that? When we get together and talk about decisions and like, how should we do this? How do we want to do that? Whether it pertains to a church service, a satellite, a watch party, maybe it pertains to like just a church governance and that kind of stuff. One of the things we always look at and pray through and think about is, well, what did the first church do? How did they do it when it came to elders and deacons and decisions, governing elders as well, and all that kind of stuff? You notice we don't have committees. All those kinds of things, we're not perfect, obviously, but we try our best to just model after the first church. And so that's why, one of the many reasons why this is a big part of Athey and what we do and how we think. A lot of churches nowadays, for example, don't go through the Bible. Maybe don't open their Bibles much less go through the Bible as it talks about verse by verse, the full counsel, as the Apostle Paul put it, also in the book of Acts. Well, here's where you get a lot of that thinking, a lot of that history in the greater church. And so this is a big one for us, very important. So, that's a good one for us to think about as far as what Athey is, our DNA. So from a couple other verses as well, we get our vision statement. Just to kind of let you know, what are we about? How do we kind of define ourselves? Well, right here. Athey Creek exists to glorify God by gathering together to receive the full counsel of His Word by His Spirit. As we do this, we will grow in our faith and knowledge of Jesus, care for one another, and share the good news wherever we go. That's it. That's the vision statement. And that's a big part of who we are. Now, you guys, like us watch party leaders, I'm going to guess that a lot of you guys, one of your fears is that maybe one of the things you considered before you became an official watch party is, are we ready for this? I mean, what if this happens? What if that? What if someone asks this? Or what if somebody does that? It's a big thing you guys are doing. But like Angela mentioned earlier, one of our ventures of faith, we did these satellite things. Have you ever heard Pastor Brett talk about ventures of faith? You don't have to raise your hand, but one of the cool things Naomi did recently was sent you guys a couple of teachings. Hopefully you got that. If not, let us know. We'll make sure. But a couple links. One of them is the teaching on Athey Creek distinctives that Pastor Brett gave, and the other one was the philosophy of ministry. We thought, man, if we could just bottle up who Athey is, what our vision is, all that kind of stuff, very helpful for you to check those teachings out and understand why we do what we do. And it hasn't been out there. Most of all that stuff, Pastor Brett has only shared in like a leadership context over the last couple of decades, but in recent years, he's actually shared that with the whole body. And it's really cool to be able to take that in one shot and kind of see what we are. Tonight, we obviously don't have time to go through every distinctive, It'd be great to do that, but you've got the teaching now in your back pocket, so that's really helpful. One of the things on there, though, as you probably recall, is the Athey Creek, we embrace ventures of faith. One of the things we did, for example, was the not watch party. That is one of the examples. What I'm trying to think of is actually the satellites that we did. That was a big step. We had never done it. Satellite churches, that whole the technology, the idea, the philosophy of it. There was so much that we didn't know, but we felt the Lord leading, so we did it. Now, COVID shifted it around. Some people would call it a failure because it only lasted 6 months, 9 months, but we would call it anything but, because ventures of faith are not failures. When Jonathan went in that classic biblical example of a venture in faith, when Jonathan went up to that Philistine outpost, he was laying it all out there. And the Lord brought about a great success there. Some might look at what we did with satellites and say, well, you guys, it didn't work out. Well, actually, so much worked out in that. We were so ready for when COVID did happen in terms of getting our live streaming going and start. Watch parties are really a continuation, if you will, on a larger and smaller scale of satellites. But I'm going to just say, though, back to that earlier question, the stakes are lower. Now, I know where a lot of you guys are thinking, well, a lot of people think, well, if I open my home to a home group or a watch party, that's just, what's going to happen? Anybody could show up. It's true, right? Anybody can show up. You never know what's going to happen. Now, usually it works out, and everybody is on the same page and wants to worship and help and support, and it's fun. But man, you open your home, it's going to happen. Someone weird's going to show up. And we dealt with this in the first 10 years or so of coming to Athey. We did a home group. But I got to tell you, as someone who moved up here for work in a different vocation, we didn't have family up here, didn't have friends up here at the time. And so fortunately, in short order, we found Athey, and the Lord just led us to do this home group thing. And yeah, weird people came sometimes, but that's more of the exception. We did a home group for a season, then we didn't do it. It's been a long time since we've had one, but I gotta tell you, for someone who moved up here, didn't have family or friends at the time, what we have now, what my kids who are all grown have now, it far surpasses any kind of family I ever had in my own life. And you're going to see that as you open your home and take these, as you already have. And I just wish, and Pastor Brett shares this a lot, as I walk in front of a blank screen here, there's a reason. I'm going to show you something in a minute. But I did want to kind of make a point to say, God bless you guys for opening your homes. The Lord's going to just give you back so much more for what you've done to just offer yourselves, your home, your time in that way. It's a huge blessing. And it's a venture of faith. It's a part of Athey's DNA, to do things like that for him. So that is one of those cool things about it. Before we jump into this next thing, let me just ask you this. I'm going to just, little pop quiz. Pastor Brett likes to do pop quizzes. You guys love pop quizzes, right? Good times. You miss school. Okay, this is low stakes, though. Nobody gets a bad grade because we're in Oregon. Everybody passes here. Okay? Yeah. So, but the question is is Athey Creek a mega church? Okay? Kind of a trick question. Because technically, a mega church is, 1,500, 2,000, something like that. So technically, now, is that bad? Because a lot of people connotate that not as a number, but just kind of as a negative, well, that means you're into this. That means, smoke and lights and big, here's a tougher pop quiz, low stakes, no big deal. Question, is Pastor Brett a celebrity pastor? No? Okay, radio. So this is a tougher one because celebrity pastor is totally subjective. You could look it up on Google, but it's technically a subjective answer that we all kind of know when you see it. Whereas you ask the other question about megachurch, and that's more of a number, even though it's more of there's some subjective kind of connotations that go along with it. Why do I ask that? Is because some people will look at Athey and they can and say, well, yeah, you're a celebrity, mega church celebrity thing. And I have to push back a little bit. And one of the reasons I throw this out is because you guys are going to get questions. You know what? I mean, you're unofficial reps of Athey because you're at Athey Watch Party. And so people are going to come and they're going to have an agenda sometimes, or they're going to come and enjoy or whatever. But either case, people might ask you, hey, why does your pastor, and you just fill in the blank, wear shorts? Why come the drums? And why is it about prophecy? They may say, or they may have a bunch of issues and so here's a good question. The other ones weren't. No, is like, what is your answer? Because you're kind of, people look at you and think, okay, yeah. Your pastor last week, he taught this about, Calvinism a little bit, and he kind of leaned a little bit towards, eternal security and maybe, and, I don't get that. And they may throw any of these things at you any given day. Now, most of them are pretty nice people. But, what's your answer? I think I think you're in the ballpark. And Pastor Ian's going to come up in a little bit. He manages our pastoral care team. And that's one of the things we want to encourage you with tonight is don't feel like just because you're a watch party, well, now you got to be the Bible answer man. You've got to know everything about 5-point Calvinism. You've got to be able to answer for every prophetic message Pastor Brett's ever given. You've got to know your eschatology. Just chill. And if somebody comes at you, just be like, you know what? Hey, God bless you. Thanks for coming. And I can, connect you with one of our pastors or, inquire this week and maybe we can chat next week offline. And if they have an agenda, that's one thing. And you might need to have someone in your group that has your 6 and can come alongside you and encourage the person to downshift and chill out, or maybe find another place they want to go and be a problem. Ask their questions. But the point we want to make to you is you don't have to, kind of have your guns blazing every time and deal with all these questions, have a million answers. You're just opening your home and turning on the TV and, having a great time of worship and seeking the Lord in the Word, right? And so don't feel like you have to do more or be more. That's a big thing, okay? Having said that, what are we about here at Athey Creek? You guys know this by heart, by the way. I should have did a pop quiz on that. Name all of them. Or at least, a couple of them. But this is it. You guys have heard the teaching. Probably, if not, you have the link. If not, let us know. We'll get it to you. But this is, as far as what Athey is, our DNA. One of the questions, what's the most important thing on here? That's a real subjective, I wouldn't even want to say myself and pick one, but, obviously you hear Brett really sharing this a lot. One of the things we really embrace here, I would say, is number 3, keeping the main thing and not getting distracted, whether it's committees or even in ministry, but focusing on Christ through everything. And hopefully you can carry that into your watch parties. Is just encouraging people. We come in. That's kind of what you are at Athey. That's kind of a big thing with Athey. Not a lot of announcements. Not a big thing, and 3 separate teachings every Sunday on tithing. Not a lot of things to sign up for. Hey, check this out or sign up for that, and tables in the back with things. It all comes down really to that number 3 of us wanting to just put the Lord and really focusing on Jesus every time we get together. The other thing that we really like about number 3 there is that we like it to be to where me and you, when we're going to church, We can invite grandma or our neighbor or our uncle and know for sure they're not going to be signed up or shaken down, as Pastor Brett says. You just know when they come, they'll hear the scriptures. It's not going to be necessarily a cushy, fun, fuzzy, warm thing, necessarily, depending on where we're at in the scriptures, but it will be about the word, and it will be about Christ, and they will likely get an invitation to meet Jesus, and it's really going to be all about that. Worship, getting the word. God bless you. Have a great week. And hopefully you can kind of have that at your watch party for that time. And hopefully you're praying through that during the week like we do, of just making your home a sanctuary for the Spirit, a place where people come in and just sense His love and kind of really sense the Spirit of Christ and can focus on Him during that time when you open your home. That's a big one. These are all really big and important, but that's one that I'll just touch on. Again, we don't have time to go through it, but that's really cool. If you guys want to talk about this, we will be around, and Pastor Ian and his team, they're great when it comes to answering for this and being able to explain why we do this. We started off with the history deal. And the reason we do that is because we can't take it for granted. 10, 20 years ago, you would come to a service, and if you attended for a few months, you would know a big percentage of Athey. But now when you come to a service, there's a lot of people, and it's really hard. People say that anyway. It's hard to connect. Although, my opinion, I think it's simple. If I want to connect, it's really up to me. How many volunteers, by the way, do we have now at Athey Creek? Over 2,000. So to me, that's the easy button. Okay, it's not like it was back in 1997 when we came. There was typically less than 100 people on a Sunday. We chilled. Many of us came early to set up and hung out to tear down. And you could really connect. But really, things haven't changed. They haven't changed in a lot of respects. And that's one of the things we wanted to point out with the whole history spiel, is that, and you'll hear Pastor Brett say this, with Athey, the message doesn't change, but what does sometimes? The method. Sometimes watch parties are an example. Satellite ministry is an example. There's a lot of cool methodologies that the Lord's opened up, just like He did for good old Apostle Paul back in the day. He didn't just pick one spot and just one congregation and just do the same thing year after year, but He really pushed. And we want to be open to that too. What's the Lord doing? What is the Lord doing in our church? What's the Lord doing in your home and in your neighborhood? Exciting. It can be a little daunting and scary, but it's exciting to really consider what the Lord might do. Having said that, I think it's really cool to look at the history, because if you didn't know it, you would walk in and go, man, you guys have kind of lost it at Athey. We've heard this from people who've been around, notably. And a lot of people will say, and have said to us in the last several years, you guys, Athey, you kind of lost it, You've just gotten off, and now it's all about, you got your cameras, you got your, fancy stuff. I don't think they've been around a whole lot, to be honest with you, because what we do with cameras, in my opinion, is pretty low key. If you've noticed, we don't have the big boom things and the smoke. And I'm not knocking churches that do it, because a lot of them do, but if you've been around a while, there was a time when, for years, one camera, little camcorder. One of our elders found that someone was getting it rid of, and he rigged it up to this wireless thing 20 years ago, and he set it up, and you could get this fuzzy, grainy signal of an Athey Creek service if you wanted it. For years, that's what we did. It's like, cool, and a few people checked it out. As time went on, we, added some things and made it a little more quality. The question I would have is well, should we have stuck with that? It's kind of nice to have some quality video production, and so that's why we've done that. Now, we've tried to do it in a very tasteful, respectful manner to where it's not all about the cameras. We don't have a studio per se. And churches that do that, God bless them, that's great. The point is, I believe what we do, we haven't changed. We're teaching through the Bible. Our pastor wears basically the same stuff that he used to, cargo, whatever, and we teach through the Bible. Understandably, though, for some, it's like, well, it's just big. There's a lot of people. You've got, there's some extra cameras. And look, here, what if someone asks you that and says, hey, why are you guys all into this stuff? What's a good answer? In my opinion, the knee jerk is, well, hey, it's good because here's the reasons. I think for me, sometimes the best answer is, you know what? God bless you. I mean, it might not be for everybody. There's a lot of little country churches and little, churches in the neighborhood and whatever that don't do certain things, and it's one service and they do, and that's great. There's nothing wrong. Does God want every church to be the same? Here, one of the questions I was going to ask is, are all churches the same, and what differentiates one church from another? Because churches are different, right? One from another. Some dress a little fancier. It's nice. Brett will oftentimes refer to our 12 noon service as, they class us up a little bit, balance it out a little bit. It's very interesting how that works out. But some churches, the attire, the worship, there's just a million things that differentiate. Is God into churches being the same way, looking, feeling, worshiping the exact same way, with instruments, without instruments, etc.? No, I mean, I think God really signs his name to churches worshiping Jesus biblically in different ways. We see that in Revelation 2 and 3, for example. And we're not here to say, hey, you got to do it this way or you got to do it that way. That's wrong. If someone wants to do it differently, that's fine. The point is we have our distinctives in DNA, and we don't really need to defend it necessarily. But when you do get those tough questions, feel free to defer to our intrepid pastoral care team. They're on hand to deal with a lot of that kind of stuff. The other thing we wanted to touch on here is this other list that Pastor Brett has taught on, and it really does. I mean, like that one list, the distinctives. That's a big list. It goes into a lot of detail, and it's good to know, especially as you move into leadership and things. But for kind of a simple version, really, of our DNA, this would be the list of ATHE. Does that make sense? How are we, for example, a ministry of simplicity? The first thing. I would just say, just so you know who we are, one of the main reasons that's on this short list of our DNA is because keeping it simple. Main thing, the main thing. All about Jesus. We're not going to try to do a bunch of stuff every Sunday or every year, for example. When you're doing what we do, you say no a lot more when you're thinking about decisions than you say yes. You just do what you can, keep the main thing, and, that's it. And so that's a big thing for us is number one, simplicity, focusing on Jesus. The church is a hospital. As Pastor Brett puts it, we're not, physicians per se, but we do know where the bathrooms and the Jell-O are. And people come here to get healed up and encouraged, and that's great. That's kind of the focus, as opposed to having all the answers, being able to figure out their problems and being the person they go to. That's really not what we're about. Ministry of simplicity. Thank God for that. A lot of cool aspects to this, but that's again why I will kind of stand on that hill and say, we haven't changed. Okay, the Lord has added, to ATHE, we've added services to accommodate and done other things like what you're doing to accommodate what the Lord's doing, but that doesn't mean we've changed. The message is the same. What we do as a ministry is the same as it's always been. I've seen it, and it's exciting to go through the scriptures verse by verse and to point to Jesus and to do all the things we do as a ministry, as Pastor Ian's going to share in a bit. But it's exciting to just kind of be really about Christ and keep the main thing, and just do that. And see how the Lord might open doors maybe in other areas as he's doing through you guys. So the methods, though, those are the things that change a little bit. Services, church locations, watch parties, other things like that. That's great. If the Lord's in it, man, that's exciting stuff. So that is a brief overview of who we are, where we've been, why we do what we do. So before we kind of shift gears a bit on that, any questions on Athey's philosophy, distinctives, why we do what we do, any of that kind of stuff? If you guys have questions, not a bad time to ask. Sounds like we've covered everything, which is awesome. Yeah. Got a couple other things to share, by the way, as we continue to go, but that's great. Yeah, if you have anything that comes up, feel free to grab me, grab Pastor Ian. We'd love to connect with you, answer any questions. I'm sure things come up in how you guys minister and things like that, which is great. But do be encouraged that you and me, we don't have to have all the answers. Knowing where to go, who to call, at times is helpful, but man, it's really disarming and just very comforting to know that if someone comes at you, you can be like, hey, God bless you. If this isn't for you, not a problem. Or if there's a question about something Pastor Brett shared, hey, we can check that out. That's right. That's great, right? Really cool. Well, let's see what we got next here. I think here's a great verse for us who are serving and plugging away. And as time rolls on, here's one we really love. Galatians chapter 6, verse 9 says, let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. That's a great one. So do keep that in mind, as we plug away. And also as people come at you, maybe, and if you have challenges, because that's going to happen in ministry. There are easier ways to do life, perhaps, but man, no better, more adventurous and blessed ways, in my opinion, than just taking those steps of faith and being a part of what the Lord's doing. Exciting stuff. So once again, I want to thank you guys. So cool to connect with you. We're excited to see what the Lord's doing and really appreciative that you take the time to come on out to West Lynn here this evening.